If you were to go back in time during the medieval period, you saw that peasants were granted these plot of lands by lords in which they were able to build their homes on or farm out of, right? And in return for getting that land, you had to pay the lords back in unpaid labor. But essentially, as long as you were working for the lords, you were guaranteed food as long as you were able to, build enough supply and not cause a famine out of, right? As well as shelter. Now, fast forward to now in the modern day and age, all of that is thrown out the window. It's absolutely insane to me that everyone's making their own money and we're supposed to be living these freedom, luxurious lifestyles. But yet, there's so many people that are living paycheck to paycheck who are just barely able to afford these necessities. You're having people missing out on payments when it comes to their mortgages or rent. And then you're having other people, when it comes to food, having to skip out on meals because they don't have any money. Or perhaps they want their kids to eat, so they have to skip out on themselves in order to stay comfortable or to not fall behind on bills. It is absolutely insane to me that we have allowed this to happen. And fast forward, also back in time, the peasants class, they would wake up and they would go to work right away. It would probably be like a 5 minute commute at that point. Again, fast forward to now, you are essentially having to drive 30 minutes, 40 minutes, sometimes up to an hour long of a drive in a vehicle that never existed, obviously, during that time period to get to work. So you're wasting all this extra free time, and it just seems to me that the quality of life, not perhaps the health aspect of it, but perhaps the overall quality, the fulfillment, and all these other things was just a lot better back then, I'd imagine. Again, health, not so much. And we as a society, we are essentially regressing back to that time period, except now the rich are extremely greedy, and it's getting to the point where they want to own everything, right? You'll own nothing and you'll be happy is their motto when it came to the World Economic Forum. This is what is going on in these people's minds who have positions of power, right? And here in America, we're already in a K-shaped economy, right? It's only going to continue to get worse. You're going to have the poorer classes continue to get poorer. The middle class is going to evaporate into either you're going to get poor or you're going to be able to get rich, right? And then the rich are just going to continue to own everything. They're going to continue to buy up properties that you're going to have to rent out of and never own. They're also currently also eating a lot of healthy foods so they can live the longest. And perhaps you probably won't be in that group because you can't afford these things because the system has been built against you. If anything, these people continue to extract wealth from people who are putting in the labor that is needed to support a country, and they're doing absolutely nothing but just leech from them. Hell, another aspect of peasants having it better than the modern day citizen is vacation. Back in those days, you had essentially 100 plus days off because of holidays, religious services, whatever it may have been, and you were able to enjoy all that free time. Fast forward to now, a worker is guaranteed maybe tops 4 weeks of vacation off in a single year. And then again, you're not even sometimes able to use up all of that vacation time because of your work demands, which is another problem. The amount of working hours that is needed for the common person to thrive or what is required of them is just absolutely atrocious. You're having people working 50, 60, hell, even some people working 80-hour weeks. This was not common for most of history. Most of the time, I'd imagine back in those days, you'd work 8 hours and that was it, right? You'd wake up, and then when the sun began to set, that was it. You would call it a day. And I'd imagine, when it comes to the dilemma of actually working, you weren't working straight 8+ hours long, right? You'd probably work 2 hours, take a 30, 40 minute break, chill, then work again another 2 hours, take a 30, 40 minute break. It was kind of that type of thing. And that allowed a person to relax and not just be constantly stressed. But we're in a society where chronic stress is needed in order for a society to continue to move on and thrive. And that is a very sad reality. And another aspect that is pretty crazy to think about is how during the medieval times, people were able to have kids, right? Even though child mortality was absolutely atrocious, right? 1 in 2 kids were essentially dead because of illness. But even then, people were still able to pop out, 4 or 5 kids and have 2 or 3 of them survive and still afford having those kids grow up to become adults. Fast forward to the modern day and age. I hate saying modern day and age, but it is what it is. You're not even guaranteed that anymore because people are already living paycheck to paycheck. They're not guaranteed these things to allow them to, have families or to start families of their own and actually be able to provide for them. So the things that were once a guarantee back in the day are no longer a guarantee. You're not a peasant anymore, in which as long as you worked, you're granted shelter and you're granted food. No, now you have to work your ass off to the point where you're running your body to the ground, ruining your health just to be able to afford those necessities to continue on living. Except now you're going to have to take a lot of medications and you're going to have to go to the doctors a lot and deal with so many illnesses if you end up obtaining them. And that is going to be the sad reality for a lot of people.